Well, one really multifaceted and important issue, both politically and on a human level, is the issue of immigration. And what we have seen are various different fights around the country regarding U.S. immigration policy. So joining us now to sort out through some of these many, many immigration issues are immigration attorney Jill Campbell from BakerRipley. Yeah, you can say hi if you want.
Yeah, great to be here.
And Ruby Powers, owner and managing attorney of Powers Law Group.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So I want to sort of first touch on one of the first acts by the Trump administration was to change the duties of local law enforcement to compel them to work with immigration and customs in ways that they typically didn't in the past. Can you talk about what that order is and the issues that it's caused? Well, on a sort of different topic, we did see this week with the Supreme Court, they let part of that travel ban go into effect. What do you think the outlook is for that case?
Well, we believe that it could go into effect as soon as maybe 24 hours from now. We've been told by some sources. And for the people who've already received a tourist visa to come to the United States who might be flying in this weekend, in most cases they've already been vetted or received their tourist visa. But if CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, wanted to question whether or not they had a bona fide relationship with someone in the United States, or were going to do a speech, or were visiting a university, or had some connection with an American individual, they could question what their intent is once they land. And so that could cause chaos in terms of the interpretation of that on a case-by-case basis. But in general, it's also going to impact the people who are trying to come into the United States from those 6 countries, and so which are Yemen, Sudan, Iran, Libya, Somalia, and Syria.
I mean, when that ban went into effect the first time, we did see a great deal of chaos in those first weeks. Is that something that we're going to see again with the Supreme Court ruling? Or it's not really ruling, but lifting? I don't know. You're the attorney.
The airport lawyers and all the listservs and Lawyers for Good Government, everybody's getting organized.
Well, on another issue, I want to talk about DACA, because I know that's sort of, I feel like if you're in the know, you know about DACA, but if you're just kind of peripherally not really involved, you don't really know much about DACA. Can you talk about that a bit? And what is DACA? And I know that the administration rescinded certain rules that expanded DACA, and they did something.
One of the benefits of DACA is that we call Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is that the person could qualify for a travel document, permission to travel for work, school, or humanitarian. So in many cases, these young individuals are finally getting to see their, dying grandparents or their family members or something like that. And in many cases, if they're paroled back into the United States, if they had previously entered illegally and maybe they happen to be married to a U.S. citizen now, it being a clean and all things being equal case, many are eligible for adjustment of status or receiving a green card if they were to pursue it. So when the election results came in November 2016, the future of DACA was really in question, and many people were wondering whether to renew, whether to apply for the travel document. And even though the administration sort of wavered and changed back their opinion, I think about a week or two ago they stayed firm with staying positive with the program. And so it is a great program.
Well, you mentioned earlier about sanctuary cities, and the only definition of one is in the Republican Party platform of what they deem to be a sanctuary city. Now, the Trump administration has threatened to remove federal funds from what they, I guess what the Republican Party platform calls a sanctuary city. And now there is a bill in Congress that apparently is moving along. How will that affect cities that are targeted in that way?
Well, I mean, we have SB4 here in Texas, and then we also, in the U.S. Congress, we have HR3003, No Sanctuary for Criminal Acts, which could be on the floor for a vote as early as tomorrow. And so there's just a lot of talk about sanctuary cities and trying to pull funding for cities that may not comply with with what the government is wanting them to do in terms of enforcing immigration law. And we see this on in city levels and state levels, and so this is things are being voted on, things are being litigated. I think it's very confusing as to what's really going to stick and who has jurisdiction in the end. But overall, it's causing a lot of fear in the community and causing a lot of activism to try to make their voice known.
Well, you mentioned SB 4, which is a Texas law, and it's a policy that will ban or that limits cooperation with, or which will ban any policy that limits cooperation with federal immigration agents, and apparently threatens to fine or jail elected officials who go against the bill in some way. And it should be going into effect, or is it going into effect in September?
Well, it's currently being litigated, and they had a hearing starting as early as this week, I believe Monday. But it is supposed to go into effect September 1st unless it's stopped.
And that is... And so what is the bulk of that bill? Is it just a way to compel police agencies to act as ICE agents?
Basically, it can allow the local law enforcement to question the individual as to their immigration status, and could use that information to potentially detain a person. And it extends the local law enforcement as for federal law, federal immigration enforcement. There's a lot of different provisions in it, and it's very confusing in the reading of it, and there's a lot of room for litigation.
Yeah, as immigration attorneys, we cringe reading the bill because it's so ambiguous and inaccurate when it comes to immigration law, and unconstitutional in so many ways. So
all over the place.
Yeah, so it's almost hard to explain it, but we do know it will hurt immigrant communities and will really hurt the level of trust between law enforcement and immigrant communities, which is already on thin ice.
I mean, one of the complaints is that it will promote racial profiling, even though it says we will not condone racial profiling.
I was wondering about that. Because
that's one of our biggest concerns, because, what does an American look like? I mean, it's not even a requirement, really, to speak English as an American. You can be born here and be American and never speak English. I mean, so what does one look like? And just the training alone to train all of the local law enforcement, it's like making them immigration attorneys, if you will, to be able to know who's a citizen. And also it defers... it distracts the local law enforcement, their resources, if they have to now go train on immigration or go detain people from actual crimes that are affecting their community.
And I would imagine people would be afraid to commit crimes, or to not commit to report crimes. So
Yes.
if they might be afraid to report, being assaulted or other bad things, I would imagine that the fear of wanting to bring justice for something that's committed against you if you're an undocumented immigrant.
Yeah.
Well, what can people do to get good information about immigration?
And although I'm in private practice with my own firm, Powers Law Group, I'm also representing American Immigration Lawyers Association, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma chapter for co-advocacy liaison. And we've been organizing attorneys to go to D.C., to go to Austin against SB 4 City Council. Currently, we're asking people to call to vote against HR3003, No Sanctuary for Criminal Acts, and HR3004, Kate's Law, which could go for a vote in the next day or two.
I find those to be just really shocking pieces of legislation that they seem to be really wanting to push forward. And I don't know, I see this as a really important and human issue that has really, I think, emotional impacts. And so thank you so much for being here. And I'd love to have you back anytime.
Thank you so much for having us.
Anytime.
All right.